Welcome again to Wilkes Wednesday webinars. Margaret Steele here, Chief Development Officer at Wilkes, which means I'm responsible for alumni engagement, university fundraising, and the respective stewardship of those relationships and donations. Today is our third webinar. Our seminar series and our past recorded webinars are available for viewing on the Wilkes University Alumni Association webpage. Our greater Wilkes-Barre community and Wilkes University is vibrant and relevant. This is especially evident during these unsettling times, and we're excited to join all of you as part of the greater Wilkes community as we learn and grow together. Most of you know Wilkes as a very special place for undergraduate students. No doubt, a Wilkes University education is transformative, and we have always been an institution that can take a young person from humble beginnings to great heights. That is why we're so committed and so very proud of our first generation scholarship fund. But the truth is, we have also been offering outstanding graduate education in the form of online formats for many, many years. This is why we've been exceptionally able to pivot in these extraordinary times with quality online learning opportunities for our students, our alumni, and our community. Our online graduate programs include nursing, business, creative writing, and education. And as you may imagine, considerations of security in the online environment are critically important to us. And therefore, we are very proud to share some of our expertise with all of you today, as these important protective steps are relevant in all of our lives as we navigate the online environment. So let's get to the webinar. Mary Simmons is our Associate Director of Alumni Relations. In addition to holding responsibilities for our alumni engagement activities, including regional meetups and mentoring relationships between alumni and students, she's also transitioned into keeping our Wilkes community even more virtually connected in very, very unique ways. Mary will facilitate our webinar today. Mary?
Hi. As Margaret mentioned, I will be facilitating the webinar today, and I just have a couple of notes before we begin. All participants are in watch mode, but we do still have the capability to be interactive. So please use the Q&A buttons at the bottom of your screen if you have a question at any point for our presenter. Those will be answered as we go along. If you would like to comment to other participants and panelists, please use the chat box, which if you click on it at the bottom of your screen will appear on the right side. In fact, we encourage this. So if you want to drop your name, class year, maybe where you're from, that'd be great so we all know who's here today. Just make sure you change the setting to all panelists and attendees so we can all chat together. Additionally, our presenter today will be using the chat box to ask some questions to all of you, where she would encourage your participation. And now I would like to introduce our presenter today. Dr. Jane Blanken-Webb is an assistant professor in the School of Education at Wilkes, where she teaches in the Doctoral of Education program. Prior to joining Wilkes, she held postdoctoral positions at the University of Eastern Finland and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where she worked at the Information Trust Institute. There, she led a cybersecurity grant-funded initiative, Ethical Thinking in Cyberspace, that developed and taught a graduate-level cybersecurity ethics curriculum. Building upon this foundation, she partnered with cybersecurity experts to develop and teach a cybersecurity for educational leaders course at Wilkes. She holds a PhD in philosophy of education from the University of Illinois, and her research has been published in numerous peer-reviewed journals in the field of education and beyond. So Jane, take it away.
Hello, thank you so much, Mary, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you also for the invitation to come today to speak. How do I share my screen? Oh, screen share. I click the button. Here we go. Share. Excellent. Okay. Hi, everybody. As Mary mentioned, my name is Jane Blanken-Webb, and I'm a professor in the doctoral program, a Doctor of Education program at Wilkes University. Today, I'm here to talk about cybersecurity and offer some basic tips for everyone to be more safe at home, and also spend some time really talking about how we think about security, because that's a big shift that I learned. I want to let you know from the beginning that my entry into the world of cybersecurity was quite accidental. It was a fortuitous accident, I like to say. I was, a postdoc and, looking for jobs, and I knew somebody, and they, there was a cybersecurity education grant, and here I had this, background in education. And so it was like, great, go do education stuff with these students, with these cybersecurity students, which was pretty eye-opening. And kind of daunting to do that. But what ended up happening was that I started with organizing a seminar for cybersecurity students. So these were computer engineering and computer science majors. We also had some law students too that we worked with. And I would organize a seminar series in which I would invite cybersecurity professionals to come in and talk to my students about their work, about their research, things that they're finding. And we would get the chance to interview them and ask all kinds of questions. So that was really exciting. From that, we also developed this ethics grant to develop an ethics curriculum. And so that's where my foundation all started from. But my background is really, I'm a philosopher of education who stumbled into cybersecurity. And so what I want to share with you today is like the very introduction of how to think about cybersecurity, some basic tips. And any questions that you have, they're all very good. I definitely want you to think about questions that you have. If I don't know all of the answers, I am well connected to the experts who will get the answers. So don't hold back in asking questions, but do be aware that if I don't know, I will find out the answers, and we can find a way to get those back to you, I'm sure. So that's who I am. The topic today is cybersecurity while working from home, something probably a lot of us, many people are thinking about this these days. So from my time working in cybersecurity, the biggest takeaway that I have is that most fundamentally of all, cybersecurity is a mindset. Like more than it is, and even just security in general, more than it is tricks and techniques to, secure your windows and lock your doors and, secure your passwords. I mean, all of that's important, but none of it will like stick and work unless we have a mindset in order to organize and think about this information. We have to build a schema to understand how we're going to think about it. So a security mindset, it can refer to a lot of things. The two meanings that I'm going to talk about today are both how we think about security, and also I want us to explore a little bit what it might mean to think like a hacker. So the first one is how we think about security. And I find within myself and also within other people that I talk to is that we tend to go back and forth between like a pendulum between paranoia kinds of ideas on the one hand and complacency on the other. So let's talk a little bit about paranoia. When I first entered cybersecurity and started learning about all this stuff and recognizing just how vulnerable we stand to be, the reality is the more and more connected we are to the internet, the more, we carry these devices around with us all the time that are tracking where we are, who we're connecting with, the pictures that we take, the things that we're Googling. We just are so quick as a society to adopt the latest technology, and we haven't collectively thought through the implications of all of that. There's a data trail on everything. If our digital lives reveal an immense amount of deeply personal information about us, and we just give it away freely. And when you really start to think about that, some level of paranoia can set in. And I think from having taught this now for a year and a half or so, like, I think that is kind of a typical beginning point for a lot of people. And I think it's okay. My goal, though, is that we don't stay in paranoia, that we want to go from paranoia to preparedness, right? I know that Roy Campbell, who's a computer science professor I worked with at the University of Illinois, he would say about the cybersecurity students I was working with, that he would say things like, we need to inject you with a little bit of paranoia in order to be vigilant. Like, and it's true. And it is also true that perhaps if you hang out with cybersecurity professionals enough, you can get a sense that there is a little bit of this. But we want to move from paranoia to preparedness, which might be like vigilance and just being very aware. There's a lot more to be mindful of than many of us tend to think, but that doesn't mean that we need to be frozen in fear. There are absolutely things that we can do to be more secure, to be proactive and responsive as needed, and we're going to talk about some of those basics. The other end of this pendulum from paranoia is like complacency, and I can identify this within myself. Also, when I first encountered cybersecurity, in the sense that I thought, number one, I'm not that interesting. What do I have to steal? Like, I'm not rich. Like, what was really at stake for me? Like, I thought, I'm not a target. It's going to be, like, I don't need to be worried about this. It's like, politicians or, people who have a lot to worry about are the ones who should worry about it. But that's not really helpful thinking, and it's not accurate. Anyone who's vulnerable, like the hackers, like, if you have like criminal hackers, right? Cyber criminals, they're after whoever is vulnerable. And the truth is that the average person is just low-hanging fruit. We have just, unhelpful or bad cybersecurity practices that just make us vulnerable targets. And while I might not have millions of dollars that could be at stake here, it's like hundreds of dollars. Yeah, that might be worth somebody's time. And that's true of all of us. So, and another issue with this that really shocked me at first is that I teach a cybersecurity for educational leaders course. Schools are a key target. Like, our elementary schools and school districts are now a key target for cyber criminals. And, you think it's because they, like, the banks and even then the hospitals have like kind of figured this out. They're harder to hack, right? Like, these kind of prime targets like have gotten with it. Our school districts haven't. And there's many other industries and many other places in which this is the case. And so it's like whoever is vulnerable is a target. It's not about how much you think you have. And I also want to add, while I'm thinking about school districts, one other shocking idea that I wasn't aware of is that student data is actually really valuable on what's called the dark web, because like a student's social security name and social security number or birth date, that information which schools have is really valuable because they have several years before they're going to be checking their credit and doing things. And so there's like a lot of time that things could be done with their credit and their information before anybody would catch it. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And so we need to be very vigilant about protecting children in this way and many other ways. So, and I say this not to swing you all the way back to complete paranoia, but we need to be aware, we need to be somewhere in the middle of this pendulum. And I invite you to think for yourself about where your own tendencies are, if you tend more towards one or the other. I find within myself that I kind of am always going back and forth. It sort of depends on the issue, but it's helpful for us to think about where we are in this pendulum when, and try to work ourselves toward the middle as much as possible. But how we just think about security and how we understand the basics of that is really a very important place to begin. Another aspect of security mindset that I'd like to talk about is thinking like a hacker. I use the word hacker, and for me, it's generally a positive term. People use it in lots of different ways, but this is a definition that I got from my friend. His name is Ryan Cloutier, who is he's a cybersecurity professional who I'm partnering with in teaching this course. He's also, one of the key experts. If you give me questions and you stump me, and please stump me, but he's, one of my key experts that I'll go to ask to get you the real deal answer on that. But his definition of a hacker is a curious individual who makes things work in a manner other than that which the manufacturer intended. So if you think about, people who will hack their lawnmower, right, to make it more powerful, or hack their car in some way to do that. It's being curious, it's being creative to make things work differently than they were originally intended because they can. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's an expression of curiosity. And so I'm actually quite fascinated with a hacker's mind and the way they think, because they just approach the world in very creative and different ways. They see new novel possibilities that most of us just don't recognize. It's kind of a cool way of thinking, and I find it to be really intriguing. So that's my understanding of just what a hacker is. But there are good hackers, what's called white hat hackers, and there's also bad hackers, like black hat hackers. So good hackers, these are my friends. I know a lot of them. They are what's called a penetration tester or a cybersecurity professional. And penetration testers, are people that you might hire to, a company might hire to try to hack their network to get in order to identify where they're vulnerable, right? So that's an actual job that people will do. So some of my former students from the University of Illinois are, pen testers. That said, cybersecurity is a really broad range, and there's many, many different roles for cybersecurity professionals. Pen testing is just one role, but that's where, someone will use their hacking knowledge and whatnot to try to get into a network in order to identify where it's vulnerable so that then you can make it more secure. This is also really cool about cybersecurity as a philosopher and someone interested in ethics. It's just interesting that you have to, from the beginning, cybersecurity is ethically murky and interesting, where in order to fix vulnerabilities, you first have to find them. And then once you found the vulnerability, you have this secret, right? And I mean, what you do with that secret, depending on the situation, can have a lot of different implications. And I think it always really excites me to think about it. So that's kind of just my interest and my entry into the field on this. Black hat hackers, or bad hackers, are really cyber criminals. They're using these hacking skills in order to harm people and break the law, and that's pretty clear cut. So a lot of times people will use the word hackers to just mean the black hat hackers. I tend to think I'm just intrigued by the way these people think. So I have a more positive valence to it, except when it comes to really malicious hackers, then that's a problem. I also want to point out a gray area of students who are hackers. Children are curious, right? And they're smart and inquisitive. And generally, I think that, most of the time in schools, when we have students who are just playing around, it's because of just being curious. But sometimes students do have malintent and can do a great deal of harm. And so this is sort of a gray area. It's an interest of mine. I think that schools haven't encountered this phenomena enough, and we need to think about how to respond to these students in helpful ways that can actually cultivate this talented way of thinking, paired with computer knowledge to do something really productive for society, but we need to have a really strong ethics education, I think, to move that forward. So that's an interest that I'm doing. I also want to mention, while we're talking about hacking, that there's kind of a spectrum of different sorts of hacking activity. Everything from the like malicious hacking, people trying to steal your bank account information, for example, or get control of your network, ransomware attacks, things like that. There's those kind of just malicious hackings. There's also a group called like hacktivism. And so these are hackers who are not trying to necessarily steal money. They're trying to promote ideologies. And so they'll take control of a company's network to try to get them to change their practices, for example. And so they're using, it's activism, but through hacking kinds of things. Most of the time, that's also quite illegal and can be very disruptive. Another category of hacking that we're not going to talk about too much today, or I'll mention it and then we'll move on, is nation state hacking. And this gets into cyber war, and it's pretty big stuff. But there are also groups of hackers that are sponsored by nation states, including the United States. And that's another area within this broad spectrum of cybersecurity and hacking. That said, what we're here to talk about today is how we can be safe personally and professionally. And we started with the theme when Mary and I were discussing this talk for today. We started with the idea of like cybersecurity while working at home. And that's the title of the talk, in fact. And I think if we're going to take that seriously, now that we're all working at home, we need to be honest with ourselves and recognize that the habits that we cultivate within our home life and our personal life are the exact same habits that we bring into our work life with us. And right now, these two are like obviously very merged. But so what I want to talk about is both your personal and your professional habits, because I really think, if we're honest, they're kind of one and the same. And let's talk about ways to cultivate helpful habits for both of these. All right, so hopefully we've gotten a sense of how to think about cybersecurity, what a hacker is, how hackers think. And now our goal is to get a little bit more specific into what specific habits we can start to cultivate today to improve our security. Okay, so in order to answer this question, first I want you to think about yourself. What do you have to protect both personally and professionally? So I want you to take a minute or so to think about this. And as you come up with answers, I encourage you to type it in the chat. You could do it any way you want, I'll take it. But if there's a distinction between personally, I have to protect this, professionally, it's that would be helpful. Let's help try to fill out this chart and see what your ideas are on that. Oops, this is not, oh, those are the answers. Don't look at the answers. I'm not seeing the chat. Oh, here we go. Maybe Q&A chat. No open questions. Maybe there's a chat here. Oh, there's 6 things in the chat. Good. Financial accounts. Thank you, Michael. Michelle, thank you. Social Security. Yep. Our reputation, very good, yeah. Research data. Hi, Lori Cooper. Lori Cooper is one of my esteemed colleagues. Good, what else can you think of that you have to protect? Yeah, student data. In my world of education, that's pretty big. Got your bank account information. Passwords, very good, yeah. Professionally, data on your constituents. Yep, your client data is what I'm imagining. Medical and healthcare information. Absolutely, David. That's really good. Professional, student, educational information, data on income, poverty status, benefits, criminal histories. Okay, wow, these are good. Family info, just pictures and names. That's excellent. Personal information being shared. Good. These are excellent. Good. Let's see how we did. I did a little bit of brainstorming myself, and we can sort of compare notes here. I'm going to click that down. So this is just what I thought of and brainstormed. So financial information, private information, like our social security numbers, our email accounts and whatnot. But yeah, also just like our reputation. I mean, there's so much that we do that is that so much of our lives we put in digital platforms, right? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. We're more intimate with our Google searches than sometimes we are with our friends, you know? I'm very excited. I'm pleased to, I'm happy, I'm pregnant, right? So the baby's due in about a month. I'm very excited, but you better believe Google knew that I was, you know, interested in getting pregnant and like Googling all the stuff and finding the app to help, you know, download the stuff. It's like the internet knew that this was something that I was interested in before anyone else did, right? Like we have all of these habits and we need to be at least mindful of that. We do have things to protect personally. Our physical safety, this is something that I hadn't thought of before. We are now putting the internet in every devices, all kinds of devices in our homes, our thermostats. Apparently there are now smart ovens that could be made to like overheat and cause problems, potentially burning down your house. I mean, I don't know how bad that could get, but there's that. Any of these smart speakers, Blue speakers, a speaker that can also be used, it can, through just computer code, a speaker can be turned into a listening device to spy on us. And that's true. We also have to protect children's innocence. The internet is absolutely a not safe place for children without supervision. That's just a reality. So these are some things. Professionally, you have to protect your very employment, right? You're, as an employee, you're responsible for the information you're secured. You are responsible for information. And if there was a security event based on something you did, you could potentially be terminated. And that's real. Trade secrets, confidential information. So this could be certainly student data in schools, employee data. Here I'm skipping down to coworker safety, but you know, the information about all the employees are also in all of these accounts. And we also should be really careful about just a company's reputation. There have been a lot of data breaches announced. I know of several that have happened in schools, and they're quite embarrassing, like silly things. Oftentimes it's not even someone hacked into the system and like now there's a data breach. It's that someone didn't store this confidential file properly and ended up posting it on the web rather than keeping it securely put somewhere, just like user error. These are so common things we have to protect. So that's where we need to begin in really cultivating our security mindset. And there are 3 habits. I have to hit the right button. There we go. There are 3 fundamental cybersecurity habits that I'd like to talk about today that I encourage all of us to cultivate. And I think that to the extent that we really adopt these 3 habits, we're going to take care of like 80% of the kinds of threats that we see, right? The remaining like 10-20% that you have there require a lot more knowledge, but the first to take care of 80% of our problems are actually quite simple things we can do. We're going to talk about strong passwords and how to do better with our passwords, the vital significance of running updates or patches, and we'll talk about phishing emails. And I've got some exercises. I also have 2 suggested homework assignments for all of you. So be ready for that. That'll be exciting. Both of those assignments are assignments that they're online things that you can do that I assign to my class early in the class to help them become more aware of cybersecurity. So I will share those with you and highly encourage you to work on that. So let's talk about passwords. I need to hit the right button. Here we go. Let's talk about passwords. 80% of hacking breaches are tied to passwords. 80%. So if we can clean up our password practices right now, 80% of these breaches are taken care of. That's huge. Why are passwords such a problem? Well, there are commonly used passwords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as we see up here, is a very commonly used password. So everybody thinks of or they use the word password as a password, right? That's a big problem. It's very easy to hack into accounts that way. We also reuse our passwords. And I am also a human who understands that, well, of course, how are we possibly supposed to remember unique passwords for every site? There's no way we could keep track of that. I have a solution for you. We'll talk about that next. We put Post-its, we put our passwords on our Post-its at our office, and we just put them right there for everybody to see, which I understand why that would happen. I'll also tell you that one of the case studies that we talk about in the course that I teach was of student hackers in 6th grade. These students found on a computer library in the school a Post-it with a login username and password credentials. And the aim of this Post-it was for people who forgot their login credentials, that they could use this login and password combination in order to search for books and use library systems to search for books and things. A group of 2 curious 6th graders found this note and then discovered that they could access far more than just the library's database to search for books and things. And, you know, fast forward, they ended up, through this initial just Post-it left out, having massive control over the whole school, like able to read everybody's emails and the ability to change grades, ability to like take over people's emails accounts if they wanted to. This one kind of freaked a lot of people out. They had access to all the security cameras. The doors we now have schools, they're electronic door locks, right? Those are all done by computers. So those could all be hacked. It was pretty big. It went on for a long time, eventually got caught. But these were just curious kids, right? And someone left these login credentials that had much more access than anybody should have. It was just posted on the computer. We can do better. We can do better. Why else? We use passwords that contain things like names and birth dates. I know. We got to change that, people. We can do better. This one I actually hadn't thought of. I thought it was sort of clever, but also don't do it, is to use password as a keyboard pattern. So if you look at some of these, 1Q, 2W, like look on your keyboard, 1Q, 2W, 3E. That actually seems clever. I hadn't thought about these, but don't do any of them. Because people already know these keyboard patterns are not safe passwords. Another big one is that we fail to so we're reusing passwords from one place to the next. This happens, and then we fail to update them even after a breach is done. A reason that password reuse is such a problem, and let me just help us all think through this a bit. If you have, your username, Jane.Blanken-Webb is my username, right? And if I then and I have Jane.Blanken-Webb at Wilkes, and then if I have Jane.Blanken-Webb at Gmail, right? Like you could just take that, whatever combination of this username, and if I have a common password or like a common set of passwords that I use, and one of those gets hacked, a hacker could then just try out that combination with, of the beginning part of the name for your bank account, they can just test it out. And if we know one, they'll get published on the dark web. And the dark web is, it is connected to the regular internet. It's just not searchable by Google. And so the hackers know how to navigate this. It's very complicated. I don't know how to navigate it myself. But it's like there's this other side of the web. Actually, it's fascinating because it was initially developed by the United States, like military, right? So there's an interesting history to all of these things. But this is a place where people can find combinations of usernames and passwords. And you think about like your Netflix login, your Amazon login, all of this stuff, like many people are using the same username for all of those and same password. So only one of them needs to get hacked. It's a big deal. And then after a breach or compromise, it's like not only is your password for that site compromised, it could be any of the other ones. So there's my little lecture. Okay, moving on. Oh, this is interesting. This is from Wikipedia. Wikipedia gives a list of all the way down to 25. These are the most commonly used passwords by year. So take a look at this, look it over, see if you recognize any of them. Don't raise your hand if you do, but just take note. These are the most commonly used passwords, and you're fooling nobody with these. Also, things like your dog's name, not particularly helpful. So, what are we to do? The reality is that we're also human, and we have, I don't know, 70, 100, if we really were to count out the number of online accounts of login that we have, it is way too much for us to remember and keep track of. I mean, human minds do not work this way. And now with passwords needing, like, you have to have special characters and numbers and all these things, it's like beyond what humans can actually hold on to. So what are we to do? I have a solution for you. Use a password manager. A password manager is something that you create one long and strong. You create one really strong password that you tell nobody. And I have suggestions on how you create one password. And then a password manager will keep track of all of your username and passwords for each of the sites. And it can work in lots of different ways. It can, like, when I want to sign up for a new online account for something, it will see, I have this downloaded on my browser, and it will see, oh, you're trying to create a new account. So then it will say, would you like us to suggest a password? And so I say, yes, please suggest a password. And it will come up with some really bizarre thing. I'm seeing chats. Maybe I shouldn't worry about this. Now I'm getting myself confused. It'll come up with some bizarre, with numbers and symbols and all kinds of stuff, and it'll be long, and there's no way I could remember that, but the password manager will. So I set it like that, and it will just keep track of it. And the next time I go to that site using my browser, if I'm logged into the password manager, it automatically pulls it up, fills in the credentials. I just click a button. So here, password security, this is the image. It's actually as simple as just clicking a button once you've set this thing up. It remembers all of them. You could have unique passwords for all of the sites that you're using. And to get into that, you only need to remember one. Now, there's a downside to this that we would be remiss not to acknowledge, is that now you have one password that is like the holy grail for all of your passwords. So that one password really needs to be good and secure. And so there is a little bit of danger, but I will say for 95% of users, this is the way to go. I'll tell you myself that I use the password manager. I actually just recently, in the past year, I switched over to using a password manager. And once I saw how this worked, I bought a family account. So I don't care what password manager you use. These are the three that were recommended to me. I use LastPass. It costs, $40 or $50 a year. So it's like, $4 a month or something like that. They're not expensive. You pay per year, but I got the family account, which can link me with my family members. And so this was huge. I sat down with my parents to get them set up on the password manager. And I'll admit it was a little bit of a learning curve. It was a bit painful to get started with this. And then also to get my parents who are in their 70s to get them started with this. It was a bit challenging to do it, but totally worth it. And as I'm sitting down with my parents trying to get them set up with this, I learned, like, oh my gosh, just how much they need this. Like, they, like everybody else, have a book next to their computer where they write down all their username and password. But as I'm working with my dad, we're discovering that, like, what he has written down on his secret piece of paper is not even the right password. Like, we can't even like it's not working. So we figured that out. We got through it. We got him set up. Everything is in his LastPass vault. The other thing that you can do is we can link family accounts, where if something happens to my dad and my mom needs access to his medical information or the bank information or whatever it is, there's ways to link them so that now she can have access when she needs it in emergencies. So there's lots of good reasons to set this up for yourself personally, for your family, and also companies can set this up. You can have a password manager for your company that will organize all of these, passwords, and it's way more secure. So there we go. One more bit. I'm going to stop talking about passwords. I feel a little bit preachy about this, but there's lots and lots of tips about passwords, but the only one that matters is right here. Long passwords equals strong passwords. A lot of times they require numbers and weird letters and whatnot. And if it requires that, then that's good. But that actually isn't the most secure. If you have like 12 characters. So the best advice hands down that I've gotten about this, and I've heard a lot of different advice, is that you should create a sentence. And I like bizarre, unique sentences, something that you'll remember that no one else will. I don't know. I'm trying to just I can think of all kinds of bizarre things like, I like green eggs and ham. Maybe you change it, like it could be a song lyric that you really like. Or it could just be, maybe you change, instead of I like green eggs and ham, I like blue eggs and pickles. I don't know, right? But it's a whole sentence. And I have a long sentence for my login. I have to type it, and sometimes it's annoying because I mistype it and I have to do it a couple times before I get it right. But having just one long password that's a sentence is something you can remember, that's unique to you. You're not, it's long is strong. Long is strong. So this is my suggestions, is that when you do create a password that you need to remember, use a sentence. It should be long. It may take you a couple tries to type it in because we're not always the best typists, or at least I'm not. And use a password manager. There's a little bit of pain in first getting set up with it, and then it's like your life will be so much better, and it will make your digital life way more secure. Okay, moving on. The next thing is running updates. And now the security industry, they're not helpful to people because, and this is silly, it's a little beef I have. The word updates and patches, they always seem to use these terms interchangeably. Even if you look at my slide, they're used interchangeably. The content of this slide I got directly from Department of Homeland Security. Like, I just pasted it in here. So that's where it came from. And you'll even see within this, they're using the word patch and update interchangeably. And I just want to say, for the typical user, it's not necessarily obvious that they are the same thing to us. So I just want to shout that out for you. What are patches? Patches are software and operating system updates that address security vulnerabilities within a program or product. So, those announcements that come up, like, do you want to run the update that come up on your computer? Your answer should always be yes. And you should take, yes, I'm going to have to restart my computer. And you know what? It might even take 30 minutes to do that. I always do it. If not like that second, if I happen to be in the middle of something, I will do it within that session. I will do it right away, because those are, for the most part, security vulnerabilities that have been found and are patched. So yes, you want to do that. Software vendors may release updates to fix performance bugs, sometimes to enhance different things within it, but ultimately they're usually security patches, and you want to do those for sure. What is the difference between a manual and updated updates? The manual ones are ones that the user has to visit the vendor's website to download and install the files, whereas automatic ones are like pushed to you. Sometimes, like, my phone will just automatically start doing them, and I don't even have to click anything. With my computer, oftentimes I have to click, do you want to do this? And if it requires a restart, then I'll update it now. I always do it, and I recommend that you do too. Some of the major incidents, it was recently the city of Baltimore got hit by a pretty bad cyber attack. That the government was shut down. This was in the past couple of years, and it was all based on a Microsoft vulnerability that the patch has been released for years before, and it was like an entire government system, just nobody had updated it from this pretty bad vulnerability that at the time was a 0-day vulnerability. It's called Blue something or other. it doesn't matter. But the patch has been widely available. It's been out there, and it's like, come on, update your systems. All right, let's move on. Here are some best practices for updating your software. We have interactive stuff coming up next, so I won't just give you words on the slide. But here are best practices from the Department of Homeland Security. Is that you should always enable software updates, automatic ones whenever possible. That'll make your life easier. This will ensure that the software updates are installed quickly as possible. So those could just be automatically where they happen in the background and you don't see them. They could also be things that you have to click. Do you want to install this? Yes. There is software that's called end-of-life software. EOL is sometimes how you also see this. It's unsupported software. They're no longer giving software updates to it. Do not use it, right? All code is buggy, right? That these hackers can figure out problems and ways to to find vulnerabilities in any code. So you do not be using end-of-life software. If you're using some super old computer that can no longer be updated, you need to get a new computer. You need to get a new phone. It's no longer secure. It's not safe. I do not recommend it. When you're updating sites, always visit the vendor site rather than just clicking on advertisements and emails. This gets us to phishing, but just clicking on random things that pop up can be very, very dangerous. We can very easily be misled. So if you want to do an Adobe update, go to Adobe site. If you want to update your browser, Chrome or Firefox or whatever you're using, go to their site and get the update from them. That's what you should do for that. When you're doing updates, avoid untrusted networks. Untrusted networks also gets into like the dangers about working. I mean, not that we can do it right now. Working in I like to work in coffee shops, right? I wrote my whole dissertation in a coffee shop in Champaign, Illinois. It was just awesome. But for the longest time, I didn't realize, I didn't realize that everything I'm doing online could very easily be seen by anyone else in the coffee shop. Like they can see, if I'm Google chatting with somebody, the whole conversation is basically being broadcasted out there, and that there could be other people in the coffee shop who are like eavesdropping on my conversation, and I don't even think that's illegal to do. However, there's a very easy way to protect ourselves from this. I mean, I think about like student papers that I would grade. I'd sit in the coffee shop grading student papers. This is student data. It's FERPA protected data. You just need to use a VPN, right? You need to get a virtual private network that will encrypt it on both sides, and they can't do that anymore, right? I had no idea. We need to be careful when we're using public Wi-Fi. So that's a little lecture on that. New vulnerabilities are always emerging, and the best defense against attackers by exploiting patch vulnerabilities is simple. Keep your software up to date. This is the most effective measure you can take to protect your computer, phone, and other devices. Now, what I want you to think about is what in your world needs to be updated. Like, what are the things? So your computer operating system, your phone operating system. What else? What other updates should we all be running? And I encourage you to get into the chat and tell us about, I'm giving you the answers again. Oh boy. I want us to be in the chat. I'm trying to hope the chat will pop up. Think about just list of things that we should be updating. Let's see how much we can get. I'm hoping the chat will pop up for me so I can see what y'all are saying. Things that we need to run these patches or updates for. Oh, good, here's the chat. I want to see it. Home security system, that's a good one. Another issue with home security systems is that if they can get hacked, you're actually letting criminals know when you leave your house, like when you turn it on, like you're telling them when you're home and when you're not. Like security systems might not be that secure. That's good. iPads, hey, that's a good one. Excellent. Hey, we've got a retired professor of computer science from Norfolk. Fantastic. Hi, George. That's excellent. I actually work with someone from Norfolk in cybersecurity with the course. His name is Henry. He's fabulous. Okay, going on. George is saying, update financial software. Yeah. Like Quicken, good. What other updates do we need to be thinking about? What other things in our house? In our offices, what other programs need to be updated? Computer updates all the time. Even my Netgear extender was updated. Oh, nice, good. Okay. Smart appliances, yes. Yes, if we get smart appliances, you now need to update your refrigerator and your oven and your thermostat, all of these things. This is one of the major danger area are these, what's called the Internet of Things, smart devices, fridge, cameras, baby monitors, absolutely. Absolutely. These are devices that we don't touch. Printers. Our printers. We need to update the software on our printers in order to make sure they have the most, oh, yes, Leanne, you've got it. Your modem and your router. That is, I'm pointing to my modem and router. That is the access point to everything in your house. And nobody's updating their router. How do we update our router? I actually had to ask about this. Oh, your car navigation. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you, Margaret. I didn't I'm like, okay, good. How to update my router, but how would I even know to do that? What you want to do, the easiest way is to find on the router itself, the model, the brand and the model number, and Google, I have a Netgear router sitting over there. Netgear, whatever the thing is, and then update. And then you can find the update. Make sure you're updating it from the site, that the legit site that is Netgear. So look at the URL very carefully. But yes, your car, yes, there's all kinds of ways we're vulnerable. So all of these things need to be updated. And these are not things that the average user is thinking about. So thank you for that. Let's see how your list compares to the one that I came up with here. Yes, your computer operating system, phone system, all the software, your internet browsers themselves. And they're getting smarter and smarter. The browsers are getting more secure. They're more concerned about your privacy. There's cool things that are happening. Make sure you're using the most updated browser. Java on your computer, Adobe Reader, all of this stuff. Your router, I'm so glad that came up. But then anything connected to your network, which is all the stuff that you guys are thinking about, this is called the Internet of Things. So one of the, I have a favorite question that I will ask all the cybersecurity professionals that I've talked to, and I've talked to certainly well over 100 of them now. And the most common answer, so my question is, what do you think is the biggest cybersecurity challenge or problem that, what is the biggest cybersecurity issue that you think we face? And the most common answer is end users. It's you and me. It's typical people who are not using secure passwords or just not doing these simple practices. That's the biggest cybersecurity problem, and that is 100% solvable. It's 100% solvable. We can be much smarter, and it's just, these are 3 simple habits I'm talking to you about today that will help us to do that. Other answers that I get, another big answer that I'll get about what is the biggest cybersecurity vulnerability is what's called the Internet of Things, and that's our printers and our baby monitors and all of our stuff that's around in our houses, that those are all mini computers that we have sitting around here that we don't think of as computers. We don't think of them as being vulnerable. They can all be used to spy on us and do all kinds of things that we're just not aware of. So here we go. All right, let's see what else we got. Ooh, here's a fun activity. So another problem, and this can get us in our personal and our professional lives, is phishing emails and getting caught with phishing. I'm sure you guys have seen we all are getting them, and some of them are easier to spot than others. They actually are getting, it used to be that they would always have bad grammar, or they were really easy to spot, and so we could feel pat ourselves on the back, we could spot these things. They're getting much more sophisticated these days. So let me see if this will work. I want to click on this link. Good, it's going. Good. This is your homework number 1, my suggestion for you. You can look at the URL here, or if you just Google's phishing quiz, phishing with the PH. You can pull this up, but we're going to start this. I want to show you how this works. What this does is it teaches you what to look for and just how tricky some of these phishing emails can get. So let's start with taking the quiz. You create a name and give it an email, but that is just in this simulation. It's just to make it seem more real for you. It doesn't actually even leave your device when you fill it in here. So what I'll do is I'll put my name in. I hope we're still seeing my screen share. If not, send me.
We can see the link, but we can't see where it went to.
Oh.
If you just maybe.
Okay. Well, in that case, I will talk through a little bit just to get it started, and then so you know, I just put my name in, Jane. For email, I don't give it my real email address. I just put fake name at email.com. You can put anything you want and get started with that. What it will then do is pull up some, you know, here's an email that looks like a legit email, and usually they'll have an attachment or something on that. And so you'll have to inspect it. You can take your mouse and hover over the attachment or the link or whatever it is to see, does it go where it says it goes? Does it make sense? And you can guess, is it a legitimate email or a phishing email? And some of them are legit in this quiz that you take of eight quizzes. And so don't feel bad when you get some of them wrong. That's normal. It's totally normal. But it's 8 questions, and that what they'll do is have you first inspect it and take a guess on what you think, and then go in and show you a closer look in terms of why you got it right or why you didn't. And so you can try that again. This is something I use early in the cybersecurity course, and it's pretty helpful. The reason that there's lots of reasons it matters. One big one, though, is if you click on a wrong link, you can infect your whole company's network with like ransomware, which is computer code that it can take over like the whole network, and it can block up all the files so that you don't have access to it. And then they'll nasty messages about like, you have to pay this much money if you want your files, and you don't know that you're going to get your files back. This has shut down hospitals in the past. I don't think the FBI's recommendation anymore. There was a time, and we went to the FBI's page, there was actually a time that FBI was even recommending just to pay the ransom. You have no guarantee that these are criminals, that they will return your stuff, that they'll return your data to you after you pay the ransom. But the recommendation at one time from the FBI was to pay the ransom, because it's hard to track them down. It's hard to get anything. If your data is that important to you, you want to do this, you know, another way around this is make sure you're really well backed up so that this problem doesn't emerge. So phishing emails, don't click on links. Be careful what we click on is the goal here. This quiz will help you to navigate that well. That's homework assignment number 1. It's 8 questions, and it's painless. It's painless. The next homework assignment I have for you, and this is really good. This was developed by my friend and colleague, Ryan Cloutier, who works for a company called Security Studio. This is a really cool company. They are unabashedly mission over money, and their mission is to fix the broken security system. They offer tons of free tools that will always be free. This personal security assessment that I'm recommending to you is you can take it for free. It will always be free. You do create a login for it, but they don't spam you. And what it does, it will take you not more than 20 minutes probably to complete it, but it's a comprehensive personal security assessment. Well, they'll ask you about your internet browsing habits, the kinds of access, the kinds of how connected you are, and what kinds of security measures you're taking. So it's got like all 7 or 8 different domains within your personal habits to look at. The questions themselves are kind of educative. They sort of teach you about areas to be mindful of and things you could do. So that's a nice benefit of it. At the end of going through this assessment, and so the answers that they give you are, it's like you say yes, no, or I don't know. And I don't know is fine. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. It all gets filtered into their algorithm, and they'll actually give you a score, like an assessment, it's sort of like your credit score, but it's your security score. You'll get a number that is your score, and then you can see by domain, like where your areas of strength and where you can improve. And it will also give you a personalized security roadmap that tells you like where you should focus your efforts, and like prioritize. Some things are more over others. So obviously we all need to start with secure passwords. We all should be starting with a password manager, right? So that's just because this is the low-hanging fruit. This is the 80% of all attacks that we can get done. But beyond that, it can tell you if you want a more tailored personal response, this will give it to you. I use this in my class pretty early on. It's very eye-opening for students. I think it's definitely worth it. You can go, I've got the URL here. It's their S2Me assessment on it. It's totally free. It will always be free. I recommend it. This will help us all secure our digital lives. So that's my presentation. What questions do you have? Thoughts or comments?
Jane, we had one question come in to just briefly talk a little bit more about a password manager and how it works when you use several devices.
Oh yeah, with several devices. That's an excellent question. What you do for that is I downloaded it to, you've got to download it to every browser that you use. So I have it on the browser of my computer here. I also download it to the browser in my phone. So I set it up with an email address and one very long obscure password. And then I download it to everything that I use. And then I will, put my one long password in, but it's automatic then. No matter what device I'm on, it's gonna, as long as I'm logged in to LastPass, it will ask, do you want me to fill in the username and password? And you say, yep, fill. So it's a couple little buttons to click, and it fills it in, and you're in. But you do need to download it to all of the browsers. So it doesn't, if I use Firefox and then I want to switch to Chrome, I have to also make sure it's on both of those browsers if I want to use it. But then the benefit of that, unlike if you some people will just save their passwords to Firefox or to Chrome to have them remember it. It's not really that secure to have them do that. I mean, a password manager is much more secure. The benefit of this is that I can go from device to device, right? And browser to browser with like LastPass, remembering all of them and linking all of them together, rather than when you're switching devices and whatnot, it might not be in there, and it's not really safe to have the browser memorizing all of your information anyway. So I would delete that. What other questions are there?
Will the PW manager preserve old passwords, or is there a chance of deletions?
The password manager, you can. So at first when you set it up, and this is the only one that I've used is LastPass, but I think they all pretty much work the same. At first when I set it up, I just give it the password that I have been using, and I just give it that one. It can give me the option if I want to change it and make it like all random numbers and letters and whatever, like really hard, I could do that. But just to start out, you could just give it the old passwords that you're using as just a baseline to begin. So when I set up my parents on this, that was it. That was my goal, was just to get the passwords that they're using and what they're doing, to get it into the system and to get it working for them. And then it will remind you once it sees, oh, you're reusing this password across platforms, it'll pop up and remind you and suggest that you change them. And I suggest that you do. And as you create new passwords, it can suggest random, really weird ones. You can still give it your own. You can give it your own if you want to think one up, or you can use a random one. It's really up to you.
Great, thank you. We have one last question.
Okay.
Is there a good website that kids can use to learn about cybersecurity from a basic standpoint?
There are a number of good websites that kids can learn. There's one, Kaylee. I'm going to have to Google a little bit to find it. What is her name? There's actually a bunch of these kinds of things, and I could like give them to you. I don't have them on top of my head. There's a girl that when she was in high school, her name is Kaylee something or other. She developed this whole initiative, and it's this curriculum. It's very focused on kids. It's very smart. It's about like taking kindergarten kids and, you know, here's like activities and lessons that they can do. I'm going to search a little bit on my computer to see if I can find it. And I apologize, I don't have this on the top of my head. It is not, it's buried in a folder that I have. But Mary, please keep track of who asked that question, and I will email them with an answer to that question.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind everyone that at the end of this meeting, a survey link will appear on your screen. So please take that survey so we know how we can improve on our webinars for the future. And thanks again, Jane. This was great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye.